Apparently, we are live. Hi, everyone. It's David Foster here, sitting back at that usual place at my piano where I feel so comfortable. And today we're going to be joined by my dear friend, the uber talented Josh Groban. He's going to do all the heavy lifting. I'll ask him one question. He'll probably talk for 10 minutes because that's the kind of guy he is. He's got a lot to say. He's had a brilliant career, and I just realized that he's been famous longer than he's been not famous. He's had a 18, 19, 20-year career, and the guy's probably only about 35 years old. And a stellar career it's been, and we want to hear all about it. So hopefully he'll be joining us soon. I'm looking at, Love You. I think that's probably for Josh, not for me. And 13 others have a request. Hello, saw your show. Very good. Love the soft side. Yeah, we need a little Pat and Dave show, but we put that off since March. Hi, Sandy. Let's see if Josh is going to join us. He's not technically challenged, as far as I know, but it seems like he's not showing up on my. Oh, he says I'm here, but Josh, you gotta ask to go live on my. You gotta ask to go live on my feed. Then I can invite you in. So maybe you need to disconnect and go again.
He's probably on the request page.
No, he's not. My wife is coming in to help me.
You have to go into the request.
No, he's not.
See?
My wife is coming in to help me. Oh. Waiting for Josh Groban? Like waiting for Guffman? Connecting?
I did it right, David. I want you to know.
You absolutely did. I know you're not technically challenged like I am.
But I am technically challenged.
You
I
are?
am definitely. Oh yeah, yeah. I've just now started. Sorry, I'm going to turn the volume up here. I've just now started to record demos and stuff with like Logic and GarageBand and all that stuff because I was just using the iPhone recorder at a piano.
Yeah.
And then trying to figure out the rest later. But yeah.
Well, I have a bunch of equipment over there, but I have no idea how to use it without a yokem or somebody to help me.
Sure.
So,
sure.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat, sort of. But thanks for joining me. And this is not really an interview per se because we have so much history together. And I have so many questions for you. But my first question, and you can ask me questions too,
Okay.
and we'll get some questions from the folks.
Sure.
But first of all, how are you? You're in LA?
I'm good. I'm in LA. I was on tour in Florida. We were right at the tail end of a tour when we all started to kind of look around and see what was going on. It was kind of in the news. Some shows were starting to get a little iffy. And as soon as they started to cancel, we canceled too. And so we left Florida right at the beginning of March. And thankfully, everybody in our group was okay. But yeah, I came back to LA because this is where I'm from. My parents are
here, yeah.
Parents are 15 minutes away from here, so I was able to look out for them, wrap them in bubble wrap, and it's been nice. It's been nice to just kind of be home. You mentioned in the documentary that New York is just such a weight on your shoulders. The energy of it is just so crazy. That's what you don't like it as much for that. That's what I love about it. But I love New York for those reasons when we don't have a pandemic, because you're shoulder to shoulder with everybody. You can experience and bounce off of people, and that's something that I think without that and being in a totally isolated environment there would drive me pretty crazy. My heart goes out to my friends and family. My brother's in New York right now.
Oh yes.
And you're in LA now too?
Yes, and we've been hunkered down since February.
Yeah.
And March, and it's been okay, but it's getting a little bit much.
Yeah. When did you start filming the documentary?
I'd say probably 3 years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say the interview that I did for it was over a year ago.
Yeah, and you were stellar in it too. You were so funny.
Oh.
And if you remember, it didn't make the documentary, but I said to you, everybody's saying pretty nice things. You need to be a real jerk and say
that was in there. That was in the documentary.
Was?
Yeah, that was in there.
But
mine was the only interview where they actually showed you hovering over the interviewee.
Yeah.
You said at the beginning you were going to be eagle-eyeing it.
Well, this long, beautiful career that you have that's not even a third over yet, the thing that always intrigued me about you was that you always wanted to be outside of the box. And when we first got together, of course, you were 17. You really had no say in how I would push you around in the studio and basically make you sing things that I wanted you to sing. But you had this other thing. I knew that you listened to Radiohead when you were a kid, and you played drums, rock and roll drums. And I knew you had that side, but I buried that side for my own selfish reasons. But when you got and found your own voice, no pun intended, and started getting out there and making your own decisions and all that, you always went for these weird, like, you'd rather sing with Bjork than Beyonce. You'd get Bella Fleck to be your opening act. Like, just all this weird stuff. Like, where does that come from when you have a voice like you have? It's so dichotomous.
Well, it's a good question. It's a conversation we've had a lot over the course of our friendship and musical relationship. You know, and I would say what Barbara said, which is that we've agreed more times we've not agreed about ways to go. But I also love that in the doc that you talk about some of your musical influences that were somewhat out of the box of what you wound up being as your truest voice as a producer and as a musician too. You know, I think it's healthy to be a fan outside of your lane. I think it's important to listen to all styles of music that may not be the best thing that your voice or hands or whatever it is does when you wake up in the morning, may not be your lane, so to speak, but inspires you, you know, might be something that's totally different. So I've always listened to stuff that just made my muso brain tick. And, you know, when you're discovered, as I was by you at 16 years old, you know, I was remembering too, watching it again, just how young, how impressionable, how little you know about your own artistic direction at that age. You know, Michael was 25. Celine had already been famous in her country. There was so much newness to my discovery when I went under your wing. And so there was a lot of kind of confusion of like, what is it that I want to sing? What do I want to tap into? I didn't want to feel too, you know, under anybody's thumb because you're a teenager and you want to feel like you're doing your thing. But I will say at the same time, you mentioned it like it was a bad thing. Your experience and your brilliance also heard in me what was I think the truest part of my artistic vision that I didn't know I had yet. And so
Really?
you might say that it was like, oh, I was being overbearing, or I was pushing you out of something you wanted to do. No, it's good to have those influences. And I've loved working with artists that are outside of my realm peripherally. And sometimes I've worked with them and worked on those kinds of songs, not peripherally. And I've sometimes succeeded and sometimes failed at those things. And that's all part of the journey. But in your world, would you say that there were ever any moments in your musical journey where you found yourself outside of your lane and it was too late before you realized it?
Well, the few times that I wandered a little bit out of my lane, I'm sort of proud of, like when I produced the Tubes and wrote with Steve Lukather and Fee Waybill, the She's a Beauty, which is
I remember when you played some of that new Tubes music for me in the studio at in Malibu, and it blew my mind. I thought it was great.
And it's very unlike me. Of course, I had Steve Lukather and Fee Waybill, two rockers that guided me along, but I was a pretty big part of She's a Beauty, and that was nice. And producing Alice Cooper was great, and he's playing on a Lynyrd Skynyrd record when I was 19 was, but I never really had a penchant for, you know as well as I do, when I lay my hands on the piano, it goes like that. It doesn't go.
Well, yeah,
you know.
But the same goes when I open my mouth, it goes ah, and it doesn't go. You know,
and I've said that. Well, although you do a great Eddie Vedder, which
I do a pretty mean Eddie Vedder.
Out, but I've said that about you so many times before. I said, you know, Josh, when he opens his mouth, that's what comes out, and it's puts you. I mean, think about it. You've had no competition in 20 years, none. You don't have to go up against Drake. You don't have to go up against Adam Levine. You don't have to go up against anybody. You're in your own lane, and that is pretty remarkable.
And I've been very lucky that that the artists that I came after, that the artists that I was inspired by, like Celine, like Andrea Bocelli, those greats that I was just so honored to be in their you know, vision, point of view back then, were so supportive and so kind to me at a time when I think I could have been really discouraged, you know, meeting those kinds of, you know, heroes, you know, when I was younger. I know now just like how mean this business can be, you know,
but you're one of them now, you know. And I wanted to ask you about Celine, because that great famous moment that your dad thank God, videotaped of you filling in for Bocelli.
And the late great Renee was the one who allowed him to keep filming because you know, the Grammy people and Ken Ehrlich and all those people, it's as it should be, pretty militant about filming rehearsals and things like that. And we were so naive, we didn't know we weren't supposed to film at a Grammy rehearsal.
Right.
So my dad's got his camcorder, and
so
Renee said let him film.
But did Celine? I know she took great care of you. And for me, it was like a full circle moment because she had been my student, and then all of a sudden she was the veteran and you were the student. But did she give you any words of advice that day, or?
She, you know, we didn't have a lot of time to go into deep discussion on the stage. You know, since then it's been so wonderful to have shared other moments with her. We just recently I got to open for her in Hyde Park, you know, in London, which was just such an amazing full circle thrill for me. And her kindness has been there throughout my career. That day, I think she understood, and I say it in the documentary, that she knew what was going on. She knew how nervous I was. She knew that, you know, when I hung up the phone and said, I'm not sure I can do this, I got to go do homework, it didn't really like hit me what the consequences of that would have been. And it didn't hit me what an opportunity I was given. I was kind of lost in my own little daydreamy world at that time. And so it didn't really actually hit me until I stepped foot on that stage and she walked out. Oh my God, this is insane. This is the most incredible moment of my life.
It's big time. It was hardball all of a sudden.
It was all of a sudden, it was hardball. It was very much. And I was, as you know, I was 16 going on 12 and a half. So like for me, I just didn't have a lot of life experience then. And so I was so naive to it all, but she knew, because I think she probably had opportunities like that when she was that age, you know, growing up in that big musical family and all of the ways that they performed and she performed back then. She knows what that pressure feels like. And, you know, I've worked with artists since then that probably wouldn't have cared less in that situation. And I just was lucky between you and her that was a situation where she just said, let go, have fun. You know, she would compliment me between takes because we did it 5 or 6 times. And she would just say, oh, that was so great. That was so great. You know, do it again.
It was great. I mean, your voice, even though you were a baritone, sort of.
I dug deep that day.
You were grabbing your balls.
I was totally, absolutely. Yeah, I wore an extra small tidy whities for that one. But yeah, no, it was great to revisit it because it's true. These moments that come along that you don't expect, you know, it's incredible.
And so actually the director of the documentary, my documentary, had given me a couple of questions for you. And one was, he said that when you and I met, there was no real Google.
That's right.
20 years ago. So he was wondering how you knew anything about me at all. And I assume it was from your parents because you couldn't have done anything.
You know, the internet then was like, remember Steve Case? Remember the AOL? You'd get a compact disc in the mail, and it was your window to the internet. And it would take like 5 minutes to sign on. So I remember that moment. Seth Riggs, who I was working with at the time, of course, filled me in on your work and who you were. And, you know, back then, if you wanted to know anything about the people that were behind the scenes of a record, you had to read the liner notes, you know. And so I went through, you know, and realized I had 10 or 12 CDs that you produced, and I had no idea that you were the producer of those albums. You know, you just listen, you throw on Celine, throw on Whitney, you throw on that stuff. And so when he told me what you had done, and then it really hit home for me when I drove, of course, to your studio for the first time.
You mean when your parents drove you?
When they, sorry.
In the Ford Explorer.
Yeah, when I tandem bicycled on my paper trail to your house. And I saw all that you have, all, you know, the work on your walls. But the real thing was, and he'll love this, when I walked into the rehearsal studio for that first rehearsal, and I saw the bass drum of the drum set, and it said JR on it. And I said, you've got to be shitting me. Is J.R. Robinson playing on this session? And, you know, all of a sudden, because I was reading all those magazines, I was reading Keyboard Magazine, I was reading Bass Magazine and Drum Magazine. I was interested in all those instruments. There wasn't really a producer magazine at that, I guess Billboard, but I wasn't in the industry, so I wasn't reading those. And so all of a sudden I'm seeing Nathan East and Greg Fillinganes and J.R. Robinson, and I'm seeing these guys, and I'm going, you know, oh, you know.
The reel just got realer.
It just got realer, yeah, exactly.
It's just it's an amazing story. And I wanted to clue you in on something that I realized during the making of this documentary, which was there's certain people I owe my career to. I mean, in different areas. There's a guy named Tommy Banks, who was a mentor of mine in Canada, a great piano player. And for the longest time, I shamefully admit this, it was like whenever you would be interviewed after you became famous and all that, I was like, he didn't mention my name. And then I realized, you didn't mention my name. And then I realized, like, that's done and gone. Like, everybody gets a hand up. Everybody gets a helping hand. And you just don't go around talking about it forever. And that was a great realization for me to like go, no, he doesn't have to talk about me anymore. He's a bona fide star. He's there. He was going to get there anyway. And I may have helped him shortcut it, but you were getting there anyway. There was no doubt about it. And before you answer,
Sure.
I also told you that I've been looking for the last decade for the new Josh Groban, the new 17-year-old, and I just can't find him. And it's so annoying because you're that good. And you know,
You're not looking for the next all the other people. You're only looking for the next me. You're done. You're
you know, I am just looking for the next you, and I can't find him. And if I would, I'd bury you in a heartbeat.
Listen,
Right.
I appreciate that. I think backsided compliment, but I think take it as a compliment nonetheless. Nonetheless,
It was.
Well, you know, and it goes to a question that I have about what you listen for in a singer and how you go about, if you still go about finding talent and finding voices in the future. But just to kind of address the conversation about talking about you, you know, I do feel like our story together and my gratitude for the door you gave me and the brilliance you infused into my world has been such a huge part of my origin story. It almost, if it ever went unsaid in interviews or things like that, it's only because I ever felt that it didn't need to be said because
No, it's
people
not
knew.
necessary.
But
That
it's,
was the lesson I learned, and it was great.
well,
You know,
I will always
love you.
shout to the a cappella. I'll start a cappella.
Yeah,
You know, I will
terrible
always
idea.
shout to the rooftops what your friendship and your mentorship meant to me. You say it would have happened anyway, but I can almost assure you that's entirely untrue. There are lots of talented people out there, many of which I've been lucky enough to work with that didn't have a David Foster in their life to give them that opportunity. And everybody who's had great success does have a David Foster in their life to say, hey, kid, you know, Quincy's been that to a lot of people. Clive's been that to a lot of people.
For sure.
And I feel very fortunate now I'm actually 39 now. Can you believe I'm almost 40?
What? You're finished.
That I've done completely. You told me that at 20, by the way, 20 and a half. When I turned 20,
It was motivation.
you said that's when you started looking for the next.
It was
Josh Groban.
motivation.
Yeah. You know, it's
one of the most proud moments of my time in the business period. I mean, besides the fact that you, along with your compadre Michael Bublé, kept the lights on at Warner Brothers basically for a decade. I mean, we just have to say that it's just the absolute truth. But one of the greatest moments for me was when I went and saw you at the Greek Theater, and you look around at that place, and it's what 8,000 people, whatever it is. And of course, you've done the Hollywood Bowl and much bigger places since then. But that moment, that you might have been filming something maybe, or I don't know, but I looked around and saw these 7,000 people screaming for you. And it was just a great moment. I was sitting there, nobody knew who I was, just sitting in my chair, watching this great concert with this great voice. And it was a real, real proud moment for me that I've had many times with you since, but that was the big one.
It's always, it looms large when you're in the audience, David, because, you know, I think I speak for every artist that came up under your guidance that we always want to make you proud out there. You know, whenever you're out there, we want to live up to, first of all, what we know are your very rightfully high standards, but also because, you know, you create such a wonderful nest. There's a lot of tough love in that nest, don't get me wrong, but we all feel lucky that we were able to be on such a high branch. And so when we fly well. I'm throwing metaphors out right and left, but when you're out there, it's really, it makes you want to put that little extra oomph in there. So,
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
when you found your own voice, no pun intended again, but when you started feeling your oats, and it happens to every great artist, they have to subdue their feelings until they can really have some success, and then they start finding their own voice, which you did, and not too early on, right about the right time, the second or third album maybe. And I fought it. I didn't like it, and because it meant I had to give up control. And but as you know, with real artists, which you are, um, I always make the joke that when I produced, if I had started with Madonna, I would have like tried to keep her making disco records for her whole career.
they would have been good.
I wanted to keep you in that lane that I loved so much, but it was a selfish love. And you bust out, and then you did all these other things, and I didn't know you could play drums. I didn't know you could play piano. I didn't know you could write. I just knew you as a great voice, but you had to express those other things, and it was annoying at first for me. But then it just became like, yeah, and you can do that too.
Well, and some things you can be taught, and some things you have to teach yourself, and I think that there's so much that you taught me during those years. And in some ways it kind of felt like turning 18 and moving out of the house or something. I felt like there were things I needed to like fall on my own, because you gave me such an amazing opportunity so early. There were things I needed to kind of learn and grow from on my own. And I mentioned this, you say finding my voice, but I enjoy going back and singing the songs we made early on far more now than I enjoyed them at that age, because they were so heavy in their meaning. They were so infused with these deep life experience emotions of love and loss. We were singing pretty heavy ballads at a very, very young age, where maybe all you and all the musicians around me had experienced those things, but I had barely even had a girlfriend at that time. And it's like, so you're singing to an audience that's a little bit older, who's experienced all those things, with people around you who've experienced all those things, and you're kind of approximating, and you're trying to make people feel something that you haven't quite lived through yet. And so going back now at the age I am now, and going back and revisiting it, this is why I say you can say it's a control thing, but it really is kind of a crystal ball thing. You get someone's essence. I like singing those songs now because I've lived them. I can tap into something very real with them now.
And you're proud of them.
And I'm proud of them. But
Yeah.
speaking of going outside the box and taking risks, and speaking of wanting to have, you say good is the enemy of the great, you're a self-professed control. You like to have control. This is the theme in the documentary of some of the bands you've worked with and things like that. When you go in, it's like trust or get out.
Not a democracy.
It's not a democracy. And that's just the way you operate. And so when I think about this kind of this infusion of the documentary, continuing to chase the Broadway dream, that is going to be hyper collaborative. I mean, it probably already has been.
I know.
And you had already mentioned, I won't say like which films or whatever, but like in the film world, I know that was something that was always a little bit harder, because there's a director and there's a producer and there's all these other things, and you're kind of service to the film. On Broadway, there's a lot of mouths to feed, and there's a lot of collaborators. I know it from experience now, having done it myself. Is that something that you like, that challenge going forward, or is that something you haven't had to quite encounter yet that would be an interesting new muscle to flex as far as the democracy muscle?
It's a great question, and I don't like the process. I don't like not being in control. And the composer is really almost the low man on the totem pole. So the director, as you know, is sort of king, and then there's all the backers, the financial backers, and there's the producers, and then there's the writer of the book writer, and well, there's the book that might have come from a novel, so there's that person, and the book writer, and it's highly collaborative, as you said, and I can't get my head around it yet. I really can't. And I was given some great advice though by Bill Haber, who's the producer on the show Betty Boop that I've been working on for about 120 years.
One of three. By the way, I didn't know there were three in various stages of production.
Various stages. They're not Broadway musicals. They're just musicals.
Okay.
They're not on Broadway yet, but they're musicals. Right. But he gave me some great advice. He said, David, you have to be prepared to throw out your best song. And I have, in fact, done that already, twice. My best song, because the director doesn't see it as your best song.
Okay. Best song to you.
Best song to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it hurts. It's like, killing one of your children off.
You haven't had to experience that in the album process? It's a different
No,
feeling?
no, not because the process was not a democracy for the most
Right.
part.
Right.
And I found that for the most part in making albums, and this is going to sound egotistical, and it is, but I did my best work when I was left alone. When you didn't look under the hood,
Right.
and when Seal didn't look under the hood, and
Right.
Chicago, and
Right.
on and on and on. That's when I did my best work. My batting average went way up. I still failed a lot, but it's when I felt like I had the best shot up to bat.
Yeah.
You know?
But you like co-writing.
Yeah. Well, I can only co-write because I don't write lyrics, so I have to co-write.
Oh,
if I could
I
write
see.
lyrics, I would not co-write.
So you co-write as you in the music, and then lyrics someone else. You don't often co-write music, do you?
No, except for people like Peter Cetera from Chicago.
Right.
He
Sure.
was such a melody smith, a tune smith. He
Right.
got those beautiful melodies. So it was
Right.
highly collaborative on every level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited to welcome you with open arms to the Broadway universe.
So is Kristen Chenoweth, apparently.
And Kristen Chenoweth. I know I speak for a lot of people in the Broadway world that we
Yeah.
can't wait
So now
for
there's
that.
an example with you and your out of the box stuff. You could have starred from Wicked to Phantom to whatever you'd want. It's an open. They just welcome you with open arms. Like, please, Josh, just do my play. Do my play. You could have done anything, and you picked this weird, like left field. I think it was off Broadway for a while, was it?
It was. That's where I first saw it. It was in a
you,
tent.
and then you killed it, and it ended up being a great choice. And I think you sit for at least half the show and don't do anything, right?
It's kind of the part of Pierre. By the way, Kat is saying that you do write lyrics. It's just not your strongest suit.
That's true. Yeah. Oh, good.
You also sing. Also not your strongest suit, but yeah.
Not my strongest.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we mentioned going outside the box. There have been times where I've gone outside the box, fallen on my ass, and then, I got to say, the Broadway experience with Natasha Pierre and the Great Comet of 1812 was an out of the box in all the best possible ways, because it allowed me to express myself in musical ways that I hadn't been able to do before. I got to play accordion and sing in different styles, but because I wasn't being me, I was being a character. It was accepted. So I could sing in a pop way or a rock way or put some fringe on my voice. And I was doing it in service of this drunken, ungodly Russian aristocrat that hated the world and hated himself. So it was acceptable in a fat suit. But it also the win-win of it also was being part of it allowed me to help bring a work that was left of center for Broadway to Broadway. And I think that shows like Great Comet of 1812 that kind of push forward the medium are good for Broadway. I had an amazing time doing it. It was such a great learning experience. The hardest I ever worked.
Absolutely loved it. And I wouldn't have given you 5 cents for it to be successful, to be honest. On it, because it was just too weird. But again, your weirdness paid off for you.
In that case, in that particular instance, we proved that weird and can be successful. We had a great run. But
would you consider? I know that your favorite musical, I believe it used to be, is Chess. Is that still your favorite musical, or?
Chess is a favorite. I do love Chess. I think. Are you a Chess fan? Do you like Benny and Bjorn's score on that?
I don't know the story, but I like the
music. Yeah. Nobody knows the story. It's about chess during the Cold War. So it's a hard sell as a book to Broadway. It's why it's never really had a successful run. I do think that they are. I think they're gearing up to perhaps give it another go. I think there's been some trials of it at Kennedy Center and whatnot. I'll always have a special place in my heart for Chess. I don't think I'll do it again, but I do love it.
What would you do? What would get you to Broadway?
I was very lucky to bring a new work. So I think that my bar was high to be able to try and do something new. But at the same time, if it was going to be something that was a revival, I think it would have to be Sondheim. I've loved Stephen Sondheim since that was my first musical love was his music. And the coolest thing that happened from the Great Comet experience was a knock on my door saying, "You have a letter at the stage door." And it was from Stephen Sondheim, typed out on his stationery, saying that he watched my PBS special, thanking me for singing his music, and complimenting and just saying, oh yeah, and welcome to Broadway. Love, Steve.
Wow. I
And
mean, from the king himself.
it just, that to me is like the kid in me just kind of just lit up, and all of those 8 show a week, nerves, and your voice constantly being fried, and just being it's so tiring, as Kat
Yeah.
well knows.
Yeah, Cat knows.
And
My
yeah.
Sondheim story is not quite as good as yours. I, of course, was a big fan. Am a big fan. I learned about him from Streisand
Oh, sure.
when we did Somewhere, which
Yeah.
strangely, he doesn't credit himself for really doing West Side Story because he didn't write the music. He only wrote the lyrics.
And what a lyric. I mean,
God, I mean,
yeah.
how could you discount that? But anyway, I wrote him because I wanted to meet him when I was in New York just a couple of years ago, and I cold wrote him on an email, got his email, not knowing whether I'd hear back from him or not. And I gave a whole long spiel about, you probably don't know me, but by way of introduction, I'm the guy that produced Somewhere for Barbra Streisand, and tried to list my credits as modestly as I could. And he wrote back and he said, "Modesty doesn't become you." That's all he wrote.
That's it?
That's it. No, and then he said, I'll be happy to drive in and meet you sometime, but modesty doesn't become you.
He's very dry.
He got me. I mean,
he's very dry.
Right,
and in our pen paldom since then, there have been times where I've had to look over an email once or twice and be like, God, was he kidding? Is he messing with me? He's a very dry emailer.
But it's the king. It's the top of the mountain, isn't it?
Well, it's probably like getting a letter from you.
Yeah, there you go.
It's the same thing.
What mountains are there out there, Josh, for you? I mean, I know there are some.
I've been, I want to keep getting better at the things that I love, but have only done a small amount of work in. I would love to keep honing my songwriting. I've loved working with great collaborators and working on that. Certainly being in quarantine, I don't know if it's been the same for you, but when all of a sudden you are forced to stop, and your kind of hamster brain has nothing to do but to slow down, and you're sitting in your little pile of the cage, and there's a piano in the corner, all of a sudden a lot of things kind of start to come to you. So I've been doing that a lot. I love, the music side is so serious. I've always loved doing comedy. I've always loved doing kind of acting and weird cameos here and there. And I'd love to go back to Broadway. And I'd love to do another David Foster song one day. That's another big dream of mine.
I like that. Maybe there's an album in our future somewhere.
From your mouth to whatever's up there's ears.
I don't know what it would be. You already did that. The album I probably would have been best with you on was the Broadway album, or the Broadway songs that you did.
Yeah, but how many eras? Well, thank you. I mean, how many? Well, you introduced me to Bernie Herms, but how many eras of musical theater, are possible? So at the very least, we should do a song or two for the next one.
Yeah. I mean, it was such a great, obvious thing, but beautifully obvious when you did that. And Bernie is amazing, of course.
David, you've got so many more summers left than you said in the documentary. What is your ear still like tuned to what's out? Like, are you still really listening for what's next as far as something that might excite you? Another teenager with a big baritone voice or whatever. Like, are you encouraged by the state of the way artists are getting discovered now, the TikTok universe and all that stuff? Is it exciting to you? Do you feel like a certain essence of how you liked to discover music back when I was discovered has now disappeared? Or do you feel like there's like more tools than ever for you to be a finder now than there was then?
That's a great question. Obviously, it is easy to find talent right now because it's
everywhere
on the internet. But
then there's so much of it,
I like to do the analogy this way. Before my time, when Frank Sinatra was performing, parents thought that he was going to be the ruination of their kids. And then Elvis came along and started shaking his hips on the Ed Sullivan Show. Yeah. And parents were going like, why don't you listen to Frank Sinatra? That's real music. This Elvis stuff is just terrible. Then the Beatles came along and they started dropping acid and all this. Like, can't you just listen to Elvis Presley? I mean, he didn't do drugs. He ended up doing drugs, but just that's real music. The Beatles, this is crazy. And on through punk music and then disco and then the grunge music of the 90s. Why do you have to listen to, Nirvana? I mean, why can't you just listen to Van Halen? And on and on
it goes. Yeah.
The only thing constant is change. And I'm not that guy that's disillusioned or disappointed by the music of today. I think there's a lot of great music when you look at artists like Pink and Ed Sheeran.
Oh, it's great.
And Adam Levine and Drake and The Weeknd. There's a
Yeah.
long list of people,
Brilliant.
Taylor Swift, that are making really good music. It's different, and it's by some stretch hard to imagine that 20 or 30 years from now, people that are 16 years old now are going to put their arms around each other at 40 and go, "Oh, honey, they're playing our song, Drake."
Mm.
You know, it's hard to imagine, but it's
I
going to
know,
happen.
but it's true. It's
That's all
true.
they know.
But
So,
as far as your discovery instinct, because you've always been a discoverer as well as a producer. So many of our stories are because your ears perked up. Does your ears still perk up?
not as much. I think I said in the documentary that I kind of got bored with myself, just doing the same thing.
Well, we
over
all.
45 years in a room with no windows, you know, and hand
Yeah.
the music out, they'd slide food under, hand the
Yeah.
music out, they'd slide food under. And then you guys, all the artists I work with, Natalie and you and Barbara and Selena, you got to go out and enjoy
We get to go out. That
the
was so
fruits of what we
poignant
created.
when you said that in the documentary, that now you finally get the chance to go out and feel that in-person validation from a crowd, which is so deserved. And I'm so glad you get to keep doing it. You know,
Yeah.
once the dust settles from this, all
And it's
this.
great. And so when I have wonderful singers with me, like Shalea and Pia Toscano and Fernando Varela, and we do You Raise Me Up, or we do Celine song and all that, people are very forgiving. They'd much rather, of course, see Josh Groban and Michael Bublé on the stage and Celine and Whitney, but they're happy with great singers.
Yeah.
And they can sing along. And I get that same sort of feeling that you get in front of thousands of people. And it's a pretty good feeling. I'm not going to lie. It's kind of addictive.
Have you taken any solos yet in your tour?
You
Vocal
mean
solos?
solo piano?
No, vocal solos.
Oh, fuck no. That's like, whatever voice I had is gone.
You know, the technology is out there now.
Yeah, the auto-tune, you can sing
You can
live through auto-tune, right?
You could, yeah.
Pitch is not my problem. I don't think. I think it's tone is my problem, or lack of, you know.
Well.
You have a long way to go before you have to worry about losing any of your tone.
Yeah, right.
We should finish, I think, with, what time is it? Is it 6 o'clock?
It's 6:06.
Oh my God. Well,
Time flies.
More than you should. I want to finish with two things.
Sure.
One is I want to tell the beautiful story of you and David E. Kelly.
Oh yeah.
I know you could tell it, but I want to tell it from my perspective.
Sure.
Jump in if you want.
Sure.
So before Josh's first album came out, I had him perform at a charity, and Bill Clinton was there, the president, and B.B. King was there, and there was a bunch of people there. And I, at that time, was really hyping Nita Whitaker more than you, because you were brand new.
And Nita's so brilliant.
Half a song, and
Yeah.
Nita was up there singing away, and I was
Yeah.
really excited for David E. Kelly to hear Nita Whitaker sing, and so I went to his table after the concert was over, and I said, he said, "Wow, great show." I said, "Well, what did you think of my girl Nita?" He was going, "Yeah, she was really good," and of course she is. He said, "But
Amazing.
who's that kid? That Josh kid?" And he said, "I want to meet him." And I don't know if you guys actually met that night, but then, as the story goes, he put you in Ally McBeal, and you had a bit part, and that was the week that Robert Downey Jr. got into a bunch of trouble in Palm Springs.
That's right.
Got arrested, I believe. And
Yep. Yeah.
by the way, what a great turnaround in that career.
It was going to be, the script was that he and Callista were going to get married. It was the big season finale. He was playing the love interest at the time on the show, and they were going to get married, and I was going to be the 22nd aria singer at the wedding. That was going to be it.
Yeah.
Hardly even credited.
Yeah. And
then, yeah.
all hell broke loose, and he got arrested. Again, I want to reiterate, he made amends, and he's got one of the greatest careers ever now.
He's the best.
But that was a bad week for him.
Yeah.
And now David E. Kelly's scrambling, and he ended up writing the entire show around you. And if you want to talk about if you could only pick one big break for you, I would say it was that big break. And you acted your ass off. Nobody knew you could act. He had a feeling. And you acted great. You sang the song. It was moving. People went crazy. We put the album out, and it sold 50,000 the first week.
Yeah, it was such an amazing thing, because it taught us a lot accidentally, actually, because, you know, we knew that my songs weren't necessarily going to be top 40 radio smash hits, but what David E. Kelly did for both of us with that was he showed how we can tell a story with another kind of media, with the music, that we were able to put this song in this fictionalized story, but even doing that, the song resonated with people, and it reached more people that night than any song on the radio would have that
Yeah.
week. And
Was it
and
You're
so-
Still You? Was that the song?
it was You're Still You, yeah. I mean, the story was just batshit bananas. I mean, I was suing a girl that wouldn't go to the prom with me and hiring Callista Flockhart as my lawyer. I mean, these are the zany TV shows you got to have in the 90s. But no, it was a moment that did change anything. But everything. But you know, the album actually didn't come out for a while after that.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
as big as that was, it was still took a minute because we still had half an album to make. And I was thrilled that that came out, and David E. Kelley was such a huge part. By the way, that night that he discovered me, I was sandwiched I was between Ray Charles and B.B. King. So I mean, talk about
Not
pressure.
bad.
Not bad. But no, we still had, and then the second Ally McBeal that he put me in was right after 9/11, and we did "To Where You Are," which has been a
Is
song
that when the firemen were walking down the street? And
yeah.
it was so moving,
So
and the perfect voice for
he
that.
gave me such incredible TV moments there. But you know, I guess the Davids in my life have been very important.
I'm going to start
Yeah.
calling myself David W. Foster.
I think that's important. Yeah. Yeah.
I will finish this beautiful conversation with two things. One, I'm so proud of you, as the world is, and I couldn't be more proud of you, and you, the human being you turned out to be. You always were. I say it's good parenting. Your parents are amazing, Jack,
and they're watching. They're actually watching right now. So
oh, they are.
Big hi to Jack and Lindy.
Hey, Lindy. Hey, Jack and Chris. If you're watching in New York, great family, and that does make a difference. And I like to say that I'm from a great family too, and it does make a difference. Indeed. So I know they're proud of every single thing you do, and as they should be. Lastly, the director of my documentary, which is on Netflix, by the way, trending on Netflix.
Great. It is trending. Every time I go on Netflix, it's right there.
I don't know what that means, but I'm happy about it. But
apparently, you're a really interesting guy, David.
Well, my director, the director, Barry Abrams, who did a wonderful job. I stayed out of his way. I let him make his film. He said, he just wrote me, and he said, ask Josh if he likes the documentary. What are you going to say? You hate it?
I love the documentary. I think it's an unflinching look at your brilliance. It's not that we need it, an incredible reminder of your influence and gifts to the world of music around us in so many ways we've known and haven't even known. And it was an honest portrayal of, you know, you're being a human being.
With all the warts and the good, the bad, and the ugly.
I thought it was, and I'm glad that it ended with your foundation work, because, and Michael says it as well, that for all the tough love, for all the other thorns, if you want to call them that, you are one of the most decent and caring human beings, and your work in that regard has just been absolutely amazing. And thank you for the kind words, not only in the documentary but here today. It's a pleasure to.
Thank you. And speaking of the foundation, you sort of, you know, your fans started donating to my foundation, and eventually I said, gosh, start your own foundation, because
I know
you've got all these people, and now you have this more than burgeoning great foundation that helps kids in schools, right?
I learned so much from the philanthropic world from following you, and not only from the David Foster Foundation, but you know, you and I were a traveling circus to, you know, Mark says it too, that you always say yes to these charities when they call, and you know, who would join you, but your new 16-year-old bagel salesman with a baritone voice
can't say no. He couldn't.
Yeah.
Say no.
So
well, you continue to do that. So and I'll be leaning on you again, I'm sure.
Well, and vice versa, David. I can't wait to see you in person again, whether it's musical or otherwise, and can't wait to be in the front row for your one of your 3 Broadway musicals, I'm sure.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks for taking the time, Josh. We love you.
Of course.
And I'm so proud of you.
You too, my friend. Thanks,
Okay,
guys.
buddy.
Bye.
Ciao.